Do you believe in angels? What if I told you that one of them was behind one of the most mysterious and deadliest massacres in human history? One night. One being. 185,000 men, gone. No war. No battle. No warning. The most feared army of the ancient world collapsed, without a single sword raised. Some call it a miracle. Others, a disease. But the truth behind it goes way deeper than blood or body counts. It's a story of a besieged city, a desperate king, a rushed prayer, and a supernatural response that rewrote the course of history. And here's the kicker. This story isn't buried in some obscure scroll, it's right there in the Bible. Tonight, you'll uncover what really went down. We'll go beyond tradition, into military tension, spiritual decisions, a ruthless empire, and wild theories involving deadly plagues and historical censorship. Buckle up. Because when heaven moves, even the strongest empires crumble. Picture this: you wake up in the middle of the night. There are no screams. No clashing swords. Just silence. The kind that chills your spine. As daylight breaks, the scene is unreal. 185,000 enemy soldiers lie dead. No arrows fired. No battle records. A massacre with no trace. To understand what happened, we've got to rewind, and meet the king who dared to trust God, when everyone else expected a general. His name was Hezekiah. Just 25 when he took the throne of Judah. He inherited not just a crown, but a broken nation, spiritually and politically. Instead of playing the game of empires, he did something wild. He restored Judah's covenant with the Almighty. He tore down pagan altars, purified the temple, revived sacred festivals, and sparked a spiritual awakening. It wasn't religious theater. It was rebellion against darkness. But Hezekiah wasn't just holy, he was smart. He knew faith without action was just talk. So while he prayed, he prepped. He built defenses, secured the city, and even engineered the famous Siloam Tunnel, bringing water into Jerusalem during siege times. It was like saying, I trust God, but I also plan ahead. That blend of faith and strategy gave the people a reason to hope, when chaos loomed outside their gates. Soon, the city was alive again. Ancient songs echoed through the streets. People remembered promises kept, peace in the midst of madness. But on the horizon, trouble was brewing. The Assyrian Empire, cruel, merciless, had already swallowed 46 cities. And now, its eyes were set on Jerusalem. While hope was rising inside Jerusalem, a storm was rolling in from the east. Not just any storm, the Assyrian war machine, led by Sennacherib. These weren't just soldiers, they were psychological warfare experts. They didn't just conquer, they humiliated. Public punishments. Mass deportations. Monuments carved with scenes of horror. Their empire thrived on fear. And now, after tearing through Judah's cities, they came for Hezekiah. And they came loud. Assyrian envoys marched right up to Jerusalem's walls, shouting in Hebrew so that even the uneducated could understand. Don't trust your God. No nation has ever stood against us. They mocked prayers. They insulted God. They planted doubt where there once was faith. Sennacherib's arrogance knew no bounds. In letters to Hezekiah, he didn't just threaten, he blasphemed. He said Judah's God was no different than the powerless gods of fallen nations. This wasn't just war, it was pride versus providence. Earthly power versus heavenly hope. And let's be real, the tension was unbearable. Supplies were running low. Fear was thick. Some probably thought about giving up. But then, something shifted. Hezekiah had every reason to panic. A brutal empire at his gates. A terrified population behind them. Letters of mockery and doom in his hands. But instead of grabbing a sword or calling for allies, he did something radical. He tore his robes, wore sackcloth, and walked straight into the temple. There, alone, broken, he fell to his knees and prayed. Not for power. Not for vengeance. For mercy. For deliverance. For divine justice. It's a cinematic moment, a king stripped of pride, alone with God. But he wasn't totally alone, he called for the prophet Isaiah. And Isaiah didn't flinch. He declared that God had heard, and would act. No battle would take place. Not even an arrow would touch Jerusalem's walls. This wasn't blind optimism, it was faith with grit. Hezekiah knew the real war wasn't on the battlefield, it was in the unseen. The invisible realm where prayer was the strongest weapon. And while Assyrian arrows gleamed under moonlight, the king slept with certainty. Something was already moving. Heaven was preparing an answer no military mind could predict. That night, everything looked normal. Assyrian soldiers slept peacefully, ready to crush Jerusalem at dawn. They mocked prophecies. Laughed at Judah's God. They had no clue, that night was already written in eternity. No alarms. No battle cries. Just movement. An angel. A divine emissary, unseen, unstoppable, sent in response to one man's desperate prayer. By sunrise, 185,000 soldiers were dead. Just like that. No struggle. No siege. Just silence, and corpses. No one could explain it. But Isaiah's prophecy had come true. No sword lifted. Just divine intervention. The Assyrian Empire, so proud of its power, was undone by the invisible. Sennacherib fled, humiliated. His pride turned to ash. Hezekiah. He didn't even need to leave the temple. His trust in God did the talking. The siege was over. But the echoes of that night were just beginning. This isn't just a story about mass death or divine wrath. It's about choices. The Assyrians chose intimidation. Hezekiah chose faith. And guess what? The weaker side won, without lifting a single blade. It's the classic underdog story. Except this time, the underdog had heaven backing him up. The contrast is sharp. A war machine versus a praying people. But faith beat fear. Humility beat hubris. And Hezekiah's courage became a legacy of what happens when you don't fold under pressure. Don't forget Isaiah's role. When others were silent, he spoke. Sometimes, God's voice comes through people, friends, verses, or even a video like this. And now, let me ask you, if you were surrounded by fear, doubt, and pressure, what would you do? Not everyone buys the angel version, and that's okay. Some say the soldiers died from a sudden epidemic. Diseases like plague or typhoid could wipe out camps overnight. Makes sense, but here's the real question. Why then? Why right after the prayer? Other scholars talk about desertions, mutiny, or political cover-ups. Assyrian records don't mention the loss, odd, for an empire that documented everything. Maybe the truth was erased to avoid embarrassment. Who wants to record a defeat that came without a fight? Still, coincidence or not, the timing's uncanny. A prayer. A prophecy. A sudden collapse. Even if it was natural, maybe the miracle was how and when it all happened. So let me ask you. If one prayer could stop the deadliest army of the ancient world, what could your faith do today? Are you surrounded by bills? Anxiety? Voices telling you it's over? Maybe you're not fighting with swords, but with doubt. And maybe, like Hezekiah, what you really need is to get on your knees. Do you still believe in divine intervention? Or have we just stopped looking for it? Tell me in the comments. Was it a miracle? A plague? A theological lesson? I want to know your take. And if you love this story, and want to explore more mysteries hidden in the Bible, in the invisible, and in the supernatural, subscribe now. Hit the bell. And check out the next video over here. Because what you've just seen is only the beginning. There's so much more lurking in the shadow of the invisible.